So Gene and I have the same background, obviously. I mean, he's talking about the theater. Unfortunately, I was here when they put in the drive-in theater, which was, that was really, I think most of the parents thought that was a mistake. Allowed a bunch of us to grow up rather quicker than we were going to grow up around here. Back to our parents, though, grandparents. The two brothers that settled initially on Fish Rock Road, they sent for basically mail-order brides in Italy, two women who were cousins to each other, and these two women, without having met these men only through pictures, came over, came around the Cape, ended up at San Francisco. Ended up meeting them. They came down from Fish Rock Road along the coast, met them when they came in, married them that day, spent the night in San Francisco, and I think that's the last time that the two of them ever saw San Francisco. They came up into the country and they started having children, and the one brother had 5 children, the other one had 4 at the time. They decided the one with the most children would stay at Fish Rock Road, the other one would move in closer to Cloverdale, and the other brother would help him homestead that area. So he had 640 acres and closer to Cloverdale. It's the old Hoffman Ranch, which preceded, or came after. It was the Janoli Ranch to start with. But so the one brother that came into town, or came in closer to town, actually ended up with 10 children instead of 4 that he had. So that's our vintage, is that side of the Ginoldi family, Gene and myself. And this, the idea of what was then and what is now, I lived on Main Street over here. That's where I grew up. So all you have to do is go out the front, go down that street, get to the corner, make a left, and on the right-hand side, the Hemseths were at the corner. They were the corner lot. Rick Blackman's parents were next to us, and then the Parker house was right there. And it had a vacant lot next to it that Grandma Ginoldi, they built her house on the back of that lot. We always had a softball game going on in the vacant lot. It's interesting to me that the lot is still vacant, it's still sitting there. This was 57 years ago when it was there. And my mother had to put up with several broken windows because we were always knocking the wall through the kitchen window. But the other thing that happened is we grew up hunting and fishing. I mean, this was a self-sufficient life. In high school, I shot deer every year in high school. We brought them back to between 206 Main Street house and Grandma's house, skinned the deer there, hung it out overnight, covered it, for keeping flies away during the daytime, hung it again the next night, and then brought the deer down to Colonel Butler's frozen food locker, and he would basically cut it up and then add pork to the meat to cut the meat up or make it a little less pure than it was. But we were all, we were all out in the woods, I was a 12-year-old boy that went through a hunter safety course in town. Actually, the hunter safety course was held in the basement of the feed store that my dad owned, down off First Street. And we went through the hunter safety course, and then we were basically, my buddies in high school, we were 14, 15, 16, we were all hunting and fishing. We really didn't, we didn't go to the movies. We basically spent time hunting and fishing and doing stuff like that. And then my dad was the owner of the feed store in town, and he was the wool buyer for Haber Wool Company out of Chicago. And everything came in by rail into this town on the rail line. We got our Purina food feed from St. Louis. It was shipped here. We unloaded the boxcars of feed, and then would load the boxcars back up with wool and ship it back to Chicago. And that stuff went on. That went on from World War II clear through the 70s until the highway took away the railroad spur and you couldn't ship anything by rail anymore. We were talking earlier outside in the lobby about the fact that we would ship 30 boxcars of wool out every summer, between 25 and 30 boxcars. To fill 25 or 30 boxcars took 500,000 head of sheep. And you can't, there's probably, and that would be from the Marin headlands all the way to the Oregon border. That's where the wool came in from. And we would ship it out of the back of the feed store. It would either come from the Cooley Ranch or the Maillard Ranch or the McLaughlin Ranch, the Hot Springs Ranch, the Genolis. They had a bunch of wool too. And so this town was basically used to having a railroad connection, which I think is pretty interesting. They're talking about smart train now and the new railroad connection, which I hope will eventually get through. But there was a big connection with the railroad system. And then that's part of then and now. I mean, there's very little, these guys, I used to work at the feed store, so I knew the coolies because they came in and got feed at the feed store.
You also delivered a lot of wool.
That's right, exactly. And Vern and Gene, I used to shag foul balls at the park for 10 cents a ball. These guys were played for the American Legion teams, and they would play teams that would come out of the Bay Area. I remember that I saw my first black person on that team that came up from Oakland. I mean, I hadn't seen anybody of color, didn't know that there were people that were different. But I grew up chasing foul balls with these guys, so, and I guess that's enough. That's enough.